Welcome back to The Small Nonprofit, the podcast where your passion meets action. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Small Nonprofit Podcast, or if you're new here, welcome. I'm your host, Maria Rio, and my co-host here is...
Caitlin, hi. So happy to be back.
Yes, me too. Happy to have you back. And I'm really excited to talk about today's topic because I feel like it's one that relates to fundraising as a solo person, because that's what most fundraisers end up feeling. Like they feel very isolated and alone. So I think today's episode will help teach people how to move away from that.
Definitely, definitely. I think that it was a turning point for me in my career and my perspective when I realized that fundraising wasn't just all on my shoulders. That a part of my role as a fundraiser was to empower other people to fundraise. And so I think that was a big weight off of my shoulders. And I hope that it will be for other people as well.
I love when you were talking about this episode idea, like fundraising is a team sport. Want to tell me why team sport was the vibe that came to you?
I think because everybody has a role to play. Even if you're the best fundraiser in the world and you've been doing it for years and years, you're always going to need people in your team and in your corner. You need people to report. You need impacts. You need systems. You need all sorts of things. So it's never just one person who's playing solo. I think of Michelle Benson, who is amazing on LinkedIn. I remember seeing a graphic of hers one time, which I was just like, this is incredible. Fundraising is not a solo act. It is an orchestra. And the fundraiser is the one holding the baton and keeping things together and coordinating. But everybody has a role to play from the very top to people who come in as volunteers. Like everybody is part of this ecosystem.
Just to keep on that sport idea, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon, right? And it's one that you have to do in community. There's so many moving pieces that you really can't do it alone. And that's why I'm so excited about today's topic. So today we're going to talk about why fundraising needs everyone. So you can send this to your board, to your ED, whoever's not helping you right now, send it to them. How to get everyone excited about fundraising and practical tips to get people to collaborate with you.
I'd love to jump in and maybe talk a little bit about our experiences with this. So both you and I come from a long history of fundraising. We fundraised in-house for both of us over a decade. So maybe I'll jump in with you. How did you feel in the organizations you worked in? Did you feel like fundraising was a team sport, or did you feel a little bit more siloed? And by siloed, I mean, and this is an experience that I've had where people were like, no, fundraising's your job. Like, I'm not part of it. Why are you asking me for resources or support, or, just feeling like there was a real barrier between departments?
I feel like for most of the organizations that I've worked at, I've been completely siloed. And any team was like one of my own buildings. So, like my team of volunteers or my actual staff people who were then forcibly shaking down program staff to get like their stats. Like, why can't you report on this impact? Why are you not tracking it? Like years of having the same conversation or trying to explain to the board, like, no, we can't just run a gala with no money and we can't find money outside of the budget, like just nonsense. But there was one organization where the ED actually had a fundraising background. So when she came into the organization, she recruited board members that fundraised. One of these board members ended up raising like $200,000 within a month of joining the board and was holding the other board members accountable, being like, so you said major gifts was going to go up by, 100,000. Why did you put that in? And then they would just stare at him like, I don't know. We were hopeful. And he's like, hopeful, it's not strategy. And I'm like, I love you. I love you so much.
Hopeful is not a strategy. I just need to repeat that so many times. Maybe get it tattooed somewhere. I don't know. But hopeful is not a strategy.
I was like obsessed with him right from the jump because like you came in, you took it seriously, you're raising money, you're holding other people accountable. So this ED, like bringing her fundraising background was huge for the board. It was also really great because then she hired an event planner. So first we had a external event planner, but then she hired one internally whose responsibility was also to manage sponsorships, tickets, the fundraising side of the event as well. Even though she wasn't primarily a fundraiser, she was primarily an event planner. And then in that role, I was doing like more like donor relations, database management, like more admin-y stuff. But even myself, like I was like, okay, how can we increase, these campaigns to be a lot more effective? How can we get people to like buy more like tribute cards through this campaign and make it more successful? So it was a really great vibe. And it definitely felt very different than other organizations where fundraising is pulling teeth.
Totally. Yeah, I feel that. And I think I have had like similar experiences, like coming from, I think, especially like the bigger organizations and bigger, like maybe mid-sized to like larger, where fundraising is like a whole department and it's a whole team and it can feel really siloed and program staff are like, but you have people, like you've got your team and everything. Like, why are you asking me for support? And even though you're raising funds to support the literal programs that they're delivering on a daily basis, but it's like we need you as part of this. But I think it was an interesting journey for me from my perspective because I came from those kind of bigger, larger organizations, and I actually got smaller and smaller as I kind of really found my vibe and wanting to be more in a kind of grassroots organization. So coming from organizations and charities where we had a team and it felt really siloed, then going into those smaller organizations where I didn't have a team, maybe I was the only fundraiser there, I still had this mentality of like, it's all my job. I have to be at every single fundraising event. I have to be part of every single ask. I have to be in front of every single donor possible. And I was able to realize at one point that was not sustainable and not possible. And that was not actually my job, but I just had it so ingrained in my head that, like, if I wasn't part of this ask, if I wasn't at every single fundraising event this organization did, then I wasn't doing my job. But realizing that, like, actually, that's not true. My job is to make sure that the people who are there and the people who are doing that ask feel prepared, feel empowered, or know what they're saying. They know what they're asking for. They feel good about it. They feel good about asking. The person who is being asked is prepared as well. It's not coming as a surprise. Like, putting all of those pieces in place to then empower the entire organization to be fundraisers. That's my job, not to be running around to 8 different bake sales on the same day in different locations. That is how you empower an entire team and how you make a fundraising as an organization work.
Speaking about empowering a team, I would love to talk about who we're looking to empower. So, like, we have a few different audiences that could support the fundraising internally and externally, how we go about doing that, and then the pros and cons of engaging the specific audience. Like, for me, just with program staff, for example, I always felt bad because fundraisers often get paid more than program staff. And like they're running off their feet, and I'm asking for additional stats that they're not currently recording. So now they have to create a system. So maybe let's start with program staff.
Yeah, I think that's a really good place to start, and it's definitely an area where you're totally right. Like, I found the same level of difficulty, and it was really challenging too. It is exactly what you said, is the fact that they are frontline. They are delivering programs. They are dealing with sometimes some really challenging and traumatic situations. And then for me to come in and be like, how many people did you resource in this specific geographic area within between the dates of 2024 to whatever? I'm like, oh God. But at the same time, I can't give you the resources you need to deliver those programs if I don't have those numbers and those stats to be able to bring back to the funder and to be able to put in like a grant application or whatever I need. So it is a challenge. And I don't think that we're going to solve this in this episode. But, I think that something that I did in a previous organization that I felt really helped was really like laying it out from the start of my role that everybody was part of fundraising, and everybody had a job to do. And I'll tell you the specific situation. So, when I was interviewing for this role, I was able to do a culture fit with the whole organization. It was a small team, so it wasn't that many people. On the culture fit, they're asking you lots of questions, but as everybody knows, an interview is just as much an interview for you as it is for the organization. So I'm like, I'm not going to go into an organization that doesn't have this perspective, that doesn't feel like fundraising is a team sport. So in that interview, I was like, you get to ask me questions. I'm going to ask the team questions as well. So one of my questions was, okay, after I start this role and I've built some systems and I'm getting going, what do you do for fundraising? What's your position? What role do you play? And I had everybody on the team think about it and answer that question. And I think that really set us off on the right foot to be like, you are part of this. Like, these are the measurable outcomes and everything that I need to get from you. And this is how we're going to work together to support your programs and make this a success. Not everybody has that opportunity, but I think for me, laying it out from the beginning that like we're all part of this and these are the things that I need from you really set it up to be a lot smoother.
I love that. It's good. It's a great place to start a relationship, knowing like, hey, I need you just as much as you need me. Like we are a symbiotic relationship here. Something that I felt really helped me in like in-house roles and bringing program staff along was helping them get the information that I had. Because like they don't know, in some cases, they don't know that grants is actually something that you're doing. They just think, oh, the government's giving me money out of the goodness of their heart. Like no one had to do anything. So they don't realize, like, no, there's actually a lot of work and a lot of data that needs to go into those applications. So sharing that information, sharing budgets and forecasting as openly as I could as a manager, a director, was also really important to me. Being like, hey, we're projecting a deficit, and like, here's what I need to make sure that we don't go down that route, right? And letting them know, like, here are all the moving parts that maybe you don't see every day because it's a completely different world they're used to, even though we're all working at the same organization. Maybe they just don't understand what tangible things they can provide to support fundraising, like storytelling, you know, like they can identify those right people for us to connect with. They also have great stories, and there's less of a risk of being exploitative when it's staff or maybe volunteers. So double win there. And just pulling the curtain back and letting them see how our worlds work.
Yes, I love that. Having that transparency with the staff and bringing them in. The other thing that I was thinking of in that bringing them in and along for the ride is celebrating wins with everybody as part of the team. So, you get a big grant or you do really well in your year-end campaign, sharing that celebration with the program team as well and being like, we were all part of it, particularly for a year-end campaign. It's not just those however many emails you send out that year. The year-end campaign is really a culmination of everything that you've been doing through the year, and it's a showcase of that. So I really like to share the results with the team and also share that aspect too, that this isn't just about the fact that I wrote a nice email on December 22nd or something. This is about the fact that like you delivered amazing programs. You talked to the stakeholders and everything in an amazing way. You shared impact. You are part of the success. So bringing them along for that and sharing in that celebration.
Okay, I thought of one more tip. Something that was really helpful for me is talking about community centric fundraising. So, like you and I, we have the same values. I'm here because I care about the same things that you do, right? So, to show that in my work, I do X, Y, and Z. I thought that was something that really helped build a bridge when we were in a siloed department and they didn't trust fundraising. They thought it's exploitative or it feels dirty. I hate the idea of rich white donors and being like voyeurs of poverty, just like breaking down those walls. And it's like, no, it's not like a monopoly person. It's a really nice, normal person who doesn't understand, maybe. They don't have the same lived experiences like me or you, or they don't understand. So, like, let's bring them along. And I think just that community centric values really help solidify that connection.
Yeah, those values and them having that trust that you are going to have the same respect and care for the people that their organization serves as they do. Because yeah, that can, and some people have been burned by that in the past, where maybe a fundraiser or somebody, or they maybe have seen something out in the wild that felt really icky and really exploitative. So I think that's really good. Yeah, sharing those values and building that trust that like your priority is always the community and the community that you serve. So I love that. I think the other group that maybe needs to be brought in to fundraising as a team sport is I don't know if I'm trying to, don't know if I should separate them or not. I want, because it starts at the top, really. Like when you are building a culture that thinks of fundraising as an organization wide activity. You've got your leadership team and the board, and maybe we talk about them separately because they are different pieces. But I think maybe let's talk about board because that can be a challenge for a lot of organizations to have your board involved and fundraising and be active there. So I don't know. Do you have any hot tips? Anything else you've seen really work?
I think like breaking it down into the most manageable pieces and letting them know like the mechanics of fundraising has been helpful. I usually find it difficult to move boards along if they're stuck in their ways. They want to dig their heels in, like they don't want to fundraise. Like I didn't join to fundraise. I didn't ever know that was going to be a requirement, right? But if they're willing to and open to it, I usually start them off with stewardship. So thank this person who made a gift and just say, "Hi, my name is blah. I'm calling from this organization. And like I've seen that you've given for the past like 3 years, and I really wanted to reach out and say thank you." So a super simple script. Um, and getting them into that like habit of talking to people, being able to talk about the work in a way that is like inspiring. And then also just building that muscle of fundraising, even though you're not actively soliciting just yet, but that muscle of building relationships.
I love that. And I love that such a, and I've done that as well. And I think it is such a great tool for also introducing board members to the joy of fundraising. Like that's such a fun thing to do. Like I love that so much of my job is rooted in gratitude. We have such a privileged role in that sense. It's really nice. So doing that helps to also, yeah, reframe somebody's maybe perspective around fundraising, that it's not a you're just hustling people for money. The majority of things that you're doing is, yeah, sharing that gratitude and showing impact. And as you said, like building that muscle. So I think that is a great one. I think something else that I've seen work in boards, because you can't always expect your board members to be your major donors. Sometimes you can. You also want board members who bring different experiences and life experiences on your board. So I always like to have the expectation that somebody is going to give a meaningful gift, whatever that means to them. So that can be financial if they have whatever amount to spend, if that is meaningful to them, or it can be their time, or it can be their expertise, but making sure that there is an expectation that all board members are giving a meaningful gift to an organization.
I think like a good way to do that is by just talking openly about money, giving money, asking for money. And I don't know, I feel like everyone comes into the sector with such a different relationship with money that they can feel very scared of asking for it or talking about it or even like admitting like I don't know how to read the budget. So I think making space for those conversations will build that confidence for people to slowly talk more about money and talk to other people outside of the boardroom about money, right?
Yeah, it is interesting how much I always get fascinated by this, but how much fundraising is rooted in that kind of like psychology of how do you feel about money? What is your perspective around it? Are you okay talking about it? And that just some of those like psychological blocks sometimes of just, oh, we don't discuss such things. It's like, okay, no, let's talk about it. Let's get open about it. This is part of what we do and how we help serve our community. So yeah, let's bring this out into the open.
Okay, so I want the people listening to get takeaways. What can they do to start building this culture of fundraising as a team sport? So, Maybe they've tried, maybe they haven't. What do you think would be the first step there?
Okay, first off, if you're an executive director listening to this, get involved in fundraising if you're not already. So do those thank yous, integrate yourself into fundraising. Like this starts at the top. If you are not involved in fundraising and you're siloing yourself off from that, then the rest of the team is going to follow suit. So that is where that needs to start. For fundraisers who might be listening or directors of development, I think for particularly around like the program staff aspect of it, which you might have more control over rather than maybe being able to speak directly to a board, it is about exactly what you were talking about, Maria, of sharing information, being transparent and open, and in that same vein, sharing those celebrations. So, for instance, even when I was at a larger organization, I would send around my grant update spreadsheet to everybody at the organization every single month because then they knew what was going on and the work that I was putting in and what was upcoming and also the things that we could celebrate. So when I did get a grant, I sent an organization-wide email so that we could all celebrate together because we were all part of it. So making sure that you're not siloing yourself too, like making sure that you are sharing this information and sharing this transparency and sharing those wins with everybody who's been part of it.
Those are all great. I love that. Yeah, the transparency piece I think goes a really, really long way. Like often like nonprofit leaders are scared to talk about where their finances are with staff in case, they quit because they're scared about we're possibly facing a deficit. Or worse, they ask for more money because you're underpaying them and you have some more money. Or worse, they want to raise. you Yeah. Wait, I know it can be scary for the nonprofit leader, but I think just leading with humility, vulnerability, transparency, like just creates psychological safety and gets everyone more invested in the mission and more willing to talk about it, advocate for it, and be like ambassadors for it outside of your four walls.
Yep. 100%. Yeah, just having that transparency. I like what you said about psychological safety as well, because if you're not telling the story, they're telling themselves a story. Like your staff is telling themselves a story. And when things are getting tight, or maybe you are facing a deficit, like people get it. Like people can feel it. So if you're not sharing the truths or like controlling that narrative, then yeah, people might think that it's maybe worse than it is. So don't be afraid to be transparent and be open and don't just do this once a year at a all staff meeting. Have it as part of your regular like routine and make sure that you're just sharing that because people are wondering, people are thinking about it.
Well, that's all we have for you today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of the Small Nonprofit Podcast. I hope that you can go out there and get that team sport vibe going. Make sure that people are running in the same direction, pulling in the same direction, and it's not just you.
Go team.
If you want to see our lovely faces, like always, you can watch this episode on YouTube. But until next time, bye for now. Thank you for listening to another episode of The Small Nonprofit. If you want to continue the conversation, feel free to connect with our guests directly or find me on LinkedIn. Let's keep moving money to mission and prioritizing our well-being. Bye for now.